Hello, everybody. My name is Boris Lipkin. I'm the Northern California Regional Director, and I appreciate the chance to have both our excellent partners join us for this video as part of our newsletter. I'll let them introduce themselves and we'll get going into the conversation. Ashley, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Ashley Swearingen, and I'm with the Central Valley Community Foundation. We're headquartered in Fresno, and we work with the 5 counties of the Central San Joaquin Valley.
Excellent. And then, Jim, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Jim Wonderman. I'm the president and CEO of the Bay Area Council, and our group works on public policy issues in the Bay Area and has a long history focused on transportations and connectivity.
That's great. And we're very excited to have both of you here. This conversation is really primed around the release of our final environmental documents for the San Jose to Merced project section. Of course, both of you know, as you've been following the program, we have ongoing construction on 119 miles of high-speed rail in the Central Valley. We also have the Caltrain corridor being electrified between San Francisco and San Jose. But this is really the critical link between those two ongoing construction projects. And we're very excited to have leaders from both regions really being able to talk to us and the folks who are interested in our newsletter and the system broadly about what it would mean for the two regions to really be connected, how that might be transformative. And we really look at this as the right moment to have this conversation as we look to complete the environmental phase and really move into the next stages of approaching construction and just in time for potential federal funding opportunities that might be coming out of the infrastructure package. So it felt very timely to get together with both of you and have this conversation. So with that kind of bit of context, maybe Ashley, you can start us off, and tell us, what is connecting Silicon Valley with high-speed rail mean for communities in the Central Valley, and how does that connection change your part of the world?
It is thinking about how long we've been talking about this vision coming to fruition. And, in my experience, which is relatively limited, it goes back to 2008 and the bond measure that Californians passed. So for a solid 12 years, 14 years, pardon me, people in the Central San Joaquin Valley have been imagining what it would be like to connect so quickly and efficiently to the Bay Area. And it's exciting to think that that is hopefully just around the corner. I know there are still major milestones that have to be met and significant execution challenges, but the vision has kept us going, I think, in the Central San Joaquin Valley. It's not without significant concern. Like we have to really rethink California. But high-speed rail makes it possible to rethink our regions and rethink what each region can contribute and experience in terms of benefits, economically, environmentally, et cetera. And without high-speed rail, like the Central San Joaquin Valley would continue to be isolated. We'd continue to put, millions and millions of cars on the road every year. We'd continue to be underserviced by transportation overall. And not have access to economic opportunity outside the region. And without high-speed rail, the Bay Area would continue to be more and more congested and just experience all of the negative consequences that we're seeing today of that congestion. So anyway, it's a bold vision. And I think, just imagining that hopefully we're not that far away now is an exciting proposition.
Yeah, I could definitely see some of what you're describing, and I think it's okay to still be stuck in 2020. I'm kind of still there as well with the pandemic. So.
Oh my God, like for the rest of my life, I'm going to think it's 2020. I think
certainly feels that way. I could certainly agree with that. And I guess, Jim, similar question to you. What does the connection to the Central Valley mean for the Bay Area or for Silicon Valley companies that you work with a lot? How do you think that changes their decision making or what they might be doing?
Well, we've been a long time advocate from the beginning, I think, like Ashley, of high-speed rail. And California is a really big state, and it's really hard to navigate the state and to take advantage of the different regions of the state when they're spread so far apart, and you're dealing sometimes, with even the traffic within one's regions, just getting out of the place is challenging. So the notion that, an hour distance from San Jose to Fresno is a total game changer. It's beyond anything anyone thought before, and it's what you actually need in order to activate the notion from a Silicon Valley company's perspective, as an example, that actually some place like Fresno could offer value. Now, we know that employees of Silicon Valley companies have been steadily moving east. They're not moving west because there's no place to go. So they're moving into the east in order to afford more affordable homes, get more space, achieve things in their life they're not able to get proximate to where they work. And people are also working remotely. So there's a whole new wild card in the question of what's in an individual's interest, what's in a company's interest. That's a new exploration. But certainly, when we supported high-speed rail and the initial discussions came about alignment, while the idea was let's connect San Francisco and San Jose and Los Angeles, the idea that we would go to the Central Valley to do it makes all the sense in the world, because that makes the Central Valley a viable place for growth, where the parts of the Bay Area and the LA region, they're not really that viable. They're rather built out, at least in the minds of large segments of the public. So the Central Valley gives you a lot of room to operate we don't have in other parts of the state. So great things can come from this, and we're excited about it happening.
Well, and I think that was what I often hear, because I talk about high speed all the time, and especially sort of the Northern California perspective of it is often, well, why didn't we just build down I-5, we get to LA really fast, and just sort of the historic pattern of how we've done some of these transportation projects. And I always bring it back to the importance of really tying in those Central Valley cities for those exact opportunities that you both described, because if we're going down I-5, we sort of miss all those, we leave those by the wayside. And the great thing about high-speed rail, as opposed to sort of airlines or flights, is that you have those intermediate connectivity points that have their own markets and their own travel patterns that you can tap into with a flight. You can't, you're not stopping midway usually. I mean, maybe you have a layover or something, but that's not going to be the pattern. And so we get kind of the benefits of all of it. Obviously we do want to connect the entire state, but even connecting two of these regions in a really cohesive way that isn't connected today always feels to me like one of those big benefit things where we really start to magnify the transportation effects that we can have for the economy and for people traveling and living their lives. And sorry, maybe it's me going a little long-winded, but I'm very passionate about this this connection as well. So certainly want to piggyback off of yours. Ashley, going back to you, I kind of understand the Central Valley Community Foundation's mission is connecting capital and communities for a just and thriving Central Valley. I've heard you talk about that. Can you sort of lay the foundation for me of what that means and how you see high-speed rail being a part of that in the future or today?
Sure. Yeah, sure. We are after community transformation, regional transformation at the Central Valley Community Foundation. And it's an exciting time to be working in this part of the state where so much of our future has not been determined yet. And when I think of other parts of California and what it will look like 50 years from now, I can already kind of imagine it's going to be a little bit like it is right now. And that's in the Central Valley. That's not the case. It's a bit of a blank slate. So we have tremendous opportunity. We also have tremendous challenges in this region, of course. And so the Community Foundation is active in organizing our communities, our anchor institutions, our community groups around long-term lasting big picture change. So our most signature initiative is called the Fresno Drive Initiative. It's a 10-year, $4 billion investment proposal for the Central San Joaquin Valley, covering everything from human capital and economic development to place-based revitalization. High-speed rail plays a role in all three of those big investment areas. So specifically, we're looking at the positive impact, if appropriately executed and with the right policies in place, for downtown revitalization, for connection. I mean, just connecting Fresno and Merced is a big win when you consider that between Fresno State and UC Merced, every year there are almost 6,000 STEM graduates coming from these two institutions alone. And so really bringing those educational institutions together, getting them to leverage their strengths and things that they're doing for bigger impact is really aided by high-speed rail. And that's a huge focus for us in the human capital area. So it is, there's still a lot that has to be figured out to make sure high-speed rail works right and well for the communities of the Central Valley. But I'd much rather have that challenge than to not have the investment, to not have the infrastructure and the opportunity to connect to other parts of the state, because we know what that looks like. And it looks like many of the challenges we have today. So if you have to pick which issue set you want to work on, my position has always been work on the issue set that ultimately results in fast, efficient, and affordable connection for our region, keeping our land use patterns focused on city centers throughout the Highway 99 corridor. High-speed rail reinforces that. Maintain our farmland. There's a lot of positive aspects that come from high-speed rail.
Well, and I hope we're kind of past that if question of, are we doing high-speed rail? Because we are doing it. It's under construction, as you know.
I think, it is always like, any conversation you have with anybody in the Central Valley, it's we want it and we're also concerned. And I think that's just the reality that we have to deal with. And I think what we are trying to do at the Community Foundation is push people to see no change means like we're just sitting here where we are for another 50, 100 years. And so it's really important to get people to say, like, man, there are times when you take a risk and you step out and you do so in a calculated and a strategic fashion. And it's like, we can do this, we can pull this off, we can learn lessons from other regions that have experienced, just devastating amounts of gentrification. We have a chance in Fresno to not make those mistakes and to receive the infrastructure investment and actually be a model for how these kinds of projects can go. So anyway, there's always a little bit of a heartburn you have to work through when Fresnans and people in the Central Valley think about high-speed rail, but my view is it's worth it. Push through it. Let's do it right, and there are going to be tremendous benefits.
Yeah, I think it's always there's always questions of how and exactly when and what all those different pieces look like, and how can we make the best decisions around implementation of the program. And there's, we have lots of history of how transportation projects intersect with their communities, and we're certainly in a position to learn from some of that and bring in perhaps a new perspective of how these big projects, which will have impacts to people certainly, but can also address those impacts while bringing the big benefits that we all hope that they will achieve. Jim, one thing I wanted to ask you about was, I know over the last few years, the Bay Area Council and I think it's the Bay Area Economic Institute that you run has done a variety of research focused on these questions around sort of valley to valley and the connections. Is there anything from that research that you think would be interesting for folks to understand, or any insights that you can offer from some of that work about what the connection does for the Bay Area and for what the future will look like?
Sure. Well, we were pleased to work in collaboration with Ashley and the folks that she mentioned that made this study possible. And it's important, to go into these things understanding as much as you can, so you can make better decisions and have people at least be informed and asking the right questions. And I think what the study basically showed, it didn't shock us, is that it's going to give us a competitive opportunity for our companies to grow into a place where they could do so in a way that perhaps can compete with some of the other states we're seeing companies actually leave for. So we want to keep as much as possible our California companies in California. And to a degree that, that's not a possibility when they outgrow their plants and their, the physical locations or the cost factors in places like the Bay Area, Silicon Valley. So the Central Valley is a place that if connected properly without the connection, you can't do it. So, Fresno then just becomes a place that's out there that people know that they go to once in a while for some purpose or to go through. But if we're connected in a very fast, reliable way, it totally changes the opportunity for a company to be able to see that, okay, there's advantages now to being able to keep a large portion of our workforce near the headquarters, near where the management is, have folks be able to interact with each other and collaborate better. So we think that that's the main finding, I think, from the study that showed that this will give opportunities for Fresno and Merced and the Central Valley to see business growth, job growth, quality job growth that they might not otherwise see without a connection like this. And it just stands to reason that we shouldn't be separated. We're all part of one greater California community. And I think the study, we were looking at this even before this study and recognizing in the Bay Area that for the Bay Area to succeed, we have to have connections, other aspects of the state where more growth is possible.
We actually had a question from social media that we had to petition folks for other ideas of things we could ask you. Well, we had both of your time. And one of the questions that came in was whether, we should have expectations, or Fresno can have expectations of Bay Area companies beginning to be interested in, potentially office space or other opportunities in the community once the system is completed or connects the two. Do you want to say anything about that specific opportunity? Or?
I think the world is changing a lot. The pandemic, when we talk about it, we think it's still 2020. I think there's a reason for it. So, in 2022, things are not the same as they were. So companies are looking at things completely differently. People are looking at things. They're looking at their jobs and their lives very differently now. And so I can say, without equivocation, that without a fast, reliable connection between Silicon Valley and the Central Valley, there isn't really an opportunity for any company to do any strategic thinking about how the opportunities that exist in the Central Valley could benefit their operations and their company. It's too far afield. But with high-speed rail, it totally changes the dynamic. And so once you get that on the table, what you do have is you have the highest growth companies in America are here. And we're seeing them grow into other states. Just a couple of days ago, Meta announced, they're going to occupy the newest, tallest building in Austin, Texas. So, Meta has growth issues. These are companies that are doing very, very well. And we'd like them to do very, very well in our state and give them those kinds of opportunities. And I have a feeling that, as Ashley pointed out, between UC Merced and Fresno State producing lots of new, young, inspired, innovative talent, that Fresno and the Central Valley are going to become very interesting locations where they weren't before and wouldn't be if we weren't to complete this segment. So, on with it from our point of view.
I feel like the Central Valley is just so undiscovered by many in the LA Basin and the Bay Area. And I can't tell you how many, probably hundreds of times now, I've had personal anecdotes of people who, for one reason or another, relocated here from other parts of the state, and they are so happy. Their quality of life is so much higher, with remote work being more of a thing, able to access economic opportunity or finding jobs in the local community already. And it's just fun. It's fun to watch people experience such a special and kind of undiscovered part of the state. It's like, I know what they're going to find when they get here. There's a time that it's actually not very far away, that you've got 45 minutes from Fresno, you could snow ski, in the morning, come home for lunch, and then hit the golf course, and then be to the Central Coast by the evening. Like, it's just, there are amazing public schools here. It's a young population in the Central Valley, disproportionately so. Anytime you're at any sort of public thing, you look around, it's just all these young people. So you really get the feel of like, this is where the future of California will be determined. And it's exciting for us to think about, folks who could really be anywhere, these businesses that could go anywhere, they could go out of state, finding out that there are 3 million people who live in the Central Valley, that they've just not even considered as part of their talent pipeline, as part of a place to relocate. Some are part of their business operations, as Jim is saying. And there are going to be some businesses that leave California for reasons that are out of our control. There are a lot of businesses that would prefer to stay in the state if possible, but it's not an option to be in a very costly and congested part of the state. And, inland California offers that. So I think we're probably just, doing the hallelujah chorus with one another this morning between Jim and me, and talking about how great it's going to be when these regions come together. But I've seen it countless times, whether individuals or businesses that have moved here, the testimony is consistent, that being in the Central Valley, it is a real win for people and for businesses.
Yeah, and I guess my hope is that once we have easier connectivity, it's the sum is greater than the whole of its parts, where instead of talking about, did we save somebody from leaving out of state, it's how do we get companies from out of state to come here because of the connectivity that we have and all the opportunity that California brings, of course, is part of at least my economic development strategy for the state, but that's not my job. So I'll leave that to the actual experts on it. So, Ashley and Jim, it's been a pleasure having this conversation with you. I want to thank you very, very much for your time. Do you want to give us any parting thoughts? And maybe Jim, I'll start with you and give you anything you want to add before we log off here.
Well, thank you very much for for having me and being able to comment on this, because it is really important, and it's a major part of our overall strategy to create a viable Bay Area, Silicon Valley, Northern California, by connecting it effectively with the Central Valley, and Fresno being the largest community. This is something we never thought we could do. And now we're not just thinking about it, we're actually doing it, which is very, very exciting. With the federal government's investment in infrastructure, which has been long awaited, I think, as you said at the outset, this is really the time. And, one of the things we lack is we don't have high-speed rail for people to check out. So I've had the benefit of, for years, going to China a couple of times a year, and as they were developing their system, which now I think has something like 20,000 miles. Boris, you would know. Maybe no one knows, but it's an amazing way to see a country and use your time effectively, as opposed to going to airports for flights of 300 miles or 500 miles or even 1,000 miles. So high-speed rail is a wonderful way for California to go, and we should be the first to do this, and we should do it well. And I think we've learned a few things along the way, and people still have questions about high-speed rail. I don't really have any questions about it. My view is, let's go ahead and do it. I think we know enough at this point. Let's make it happen and do it as quickly as we can. I think with the EIR coming out this year, this is the time for us to go get the money that we're going to need to build this crucial segment that is going to be a bigger game changer in our lives and in our kids' lives than I think most people would think. Once they get a chance to experience it, it's going to change the way people behave.
I wouldn't argue with any of what you just said, Jim. Ashley, any last thoughts from you? And
I think of one of my favorite expressions that I heard once is this: that vision gives pain purpose. And I think that's a great way to think about high-speed rail. When you imagine the vision of what it can be like with our regions connected efficiently, affordably, the way we can save farmland in the Central Valley by, really growing up around major transit options like high-speed rail. There's pain, there's no doubt, nothing good or worthwhile is easy, but the vision makes it make sense. And we're so close, particularly with the massive amounts of infrastructure investment that's now headed our way. I think there will be a time in the not too distant future when we will all stand by and say, we're glad we stuck it out, that it's serving our communities. And it really becomes, as Jim said, just like it's just a given. Of course we do high-speed rail in California and in the US. So just a little bit longer, we're going to get to that moment. I'm convinced of it.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to being on the train with both of you between the two regions. And for upcoming milestones, you can check out our website at hsr.ca.gov. And we do expect to bring that final environmental document to our board of directors this April. So it's right around the corner.
I think for doing this show that Ashley and I just bought a ticket on the premiere trip. Okay?
Listen,
have to
I've got,
agree to it now,
a
Boris.
bottle of champagne set aside
A
from
good one.
2020. And I want to be one of the people that gets to smash the champagne bottle on the nose of that first strain.
I got it. I think both of those may be above my pay grade, but I promise I will advocate on both of your behalf to make
No,
sure that
you have
those
to
two
commit.
things happen.
You can't push it away. It's all on you, Boris.
I got it. I'll be there with you guys.
Right.
Well, thank you so much. And I hope you both have a great rest of your day, and I appreciate you doing this with us.